So now that we have installed the framework, the next thing is for us to actually get it up and running. So the easiest way to actually get the framework running is to use the inbuilt PHP server. So to do that, we can actually use the Legato command line tool. So we say PHP Legato start. So we run into an error here. And the reason is because if we go back again to the documentation, click on installation, and then once we change it to be inside of the folder, we need to run composer dump autoload. All right, so that's my bad. Let's come back here and then just run composer dump autoload. So once we have done that, then I can run the command again to start the server. You can now see that Legato development server started. You can open your browser and navigate to localhost column 8000 to actually view the project. So I'm going to copy that, come over to Chrome, then just paste it here, and voila, so we have our project right here, a fresh installation of the Legato framework version 1. As I mentioned previously, this is the fastest way to get up and running with the Legato framework. You can actually begin to develop right now on your local development environment. But if you also want to use like name-based virtual host, there are two options that we can actually use. So I'm going to open my test editor and then come inside of my host file. So you should be able to locate the host file if you're on Windows, or if you're on a Mac, this would be /etc/host. So you should be able to actually locate this file, and then we are just going to create one more entry here. So I'm going to copy this and then paste it here, and then I'm going to call this local.blog.com and then save it. So this requires administrative permission. I'm going to save that. So we can now minimize this and then come back again to the documentation. Then let's scroll down here. So right here, we want to focus on this, specifying a different host name. So previously we used PHP Legato start, which is going to just use the default configuration, starting a server on localhost 8000. But we can also specify a different host name, and we have just created one. So what we are going to do is to use the options to specify a different host name, and optionally we can also specify a different port. So if you look at the documentation here, we have already done this, which is to create the entry inside of our host file. And then we can go back again to the command line. So let's come here and then stop the server. So right now we repeat the exact same command, PHP Legato start. Now we want to pass in the host name option, which should be equal to local.blog.com. Okay, so if we want to change the port, we can say --port and then equal to 8001, for example. So this will basically change the default configuration. We can now specify what we want to use to actually use the framework. You can now see that the server is running on this address. As long as the port is free, it will just be able to spin up a new server for you. So we can close this, and then using the local domain name that we just created. And then lastly, if we want to make this permanent, we don't want to open a terminal while we are developing, because in order to use this, you must leave this terminal open, which means if I close this right now and then we refresh, it's going to tell me that it can no longer reach the server. Remember that you are basically using the Legato framework inbuilt PHP server. So if you want to make it permanent, you want to be able to use local.blog.com, then you need to update your views configuration. If you have never set up a views configuration before, then you can also browse on Dev Screencast and just check my introduction to PHP course. I have about 2 videos that shows how to do it on Windows and also how to do it on a Mac. So I'm going to update my views. So I'm going to grab this and then create a new one here. So this should now be blog, and the folder should be blog. Right, so I'm going to just quickly check to ensure that I don't have any other application running on a blog folder. So right here, just look through. Okay, so it looks good to me. You take note here that the entry point for the Legato framework is a public folder, which I'm going to talk to you about in the next video. But right now, we are specifying the full path to this specific folder and then public, and then specifying what is the domain name that we want to link it to. So just going to restart Apache, and then we can actually just reload. So now we are reloading on local.blog.com. So let's reload, and now we are able to view the site. So we started with the installation of Legato framework, and then we're able to actually see the various methods for getting up and running with Legato on our local development environment. The first option was to use the inbuilt PHP server. The second option was to specify a different host name. And then the last option was to actually set up views properly.